to.
All right. So it seems like more and more often a story arises of some unarmed person being shot down by the police for no evident reason. And while we'd like to believe that this has only ever occurred by accident, the reality is we live in an age where police tend to be rather trigger happy when it comes to the necessity of lethal force in a number of situations. Aside from the unlawful use of lethal force, it is more and more apparent that many police officers have a sort of mob mentality where they believe that their police badge gives them a sort of immunity to the law, which doesn't actually exist. So I'm Justin Johnson, and I'm going to be claiming that arming police officers with body cameras that cannot be turned off or disabled would provide a number of benefits for police officers and citizens alike. So my first point would be that police body cameras increase police accountability and transparency in the courtroom. So body cameras provide some of the most definitive, conclusive, and unbiased evidence in court. They are a true account of what actually happens in a number of uncertain situations. In cases like the shooting of Michael Brown, for example, where there's really not enough evidence to truly determine whether or not the use of lethal force was necessary, a body camera would have provided the definitive evidence necessary to prove whether or not it was justified. The long-term result would be decreased tension between police departments and communities where tension can run high, such as in the case of Ferguson, Missouri, for example. My second point would be that not only would cameras help properly hold officers accountable for unlawful and illegal activities, they would also directly and positively affect the mentality of officers as well. Police Foundation Executive Fellow Chief Tony Farrar conducted a survey and found that police body cameras reduced instances of excessive use of force by over 50%, and reduced citizen complaints and improved police-citizen relations by up to 88%. Research done by Dr. Barak Ariel concludes that body cameras are proven to psychologically affect the mentality of officers and influence them to make better decisions. It is especially, so for example, to put this into context, it is especially common in wealthier communities for officers to profile drivers based on whether or not they appear to fit in the community or not, and then pull them over for a crime that they didn't necessarily commit, basically just so they can question them and harass them and see what they're doing in the community. If all officers were equipped with body cameras, these types of unlawful traffic stops would be significantly reduced, since people that recognize the illegitimate nature of the traffic stop could request video evidence in court to fight a ticket if they get one, or anything like that. So I'm not saying that all police officers are bad people and the only reason for cameras is to hold them accountable. Body cameras would also help police officers in a number of ways. For example, it would help them prosecute people for crimes that are difficult to prove in court. For example, jaywalking and illegal driving maneuvers like crossing over into the carpool lane where it's a double yellow line. These types of crimes are not too severe, however they do endanger people when they're committed. The problem is that there's very little proof that these crimes ever took place if there's no video footage, so it's easy for people to fight them in court. Body cameras would give officers the evidence they need to successfully win in court if the perpetrator of one of these crimes were to fight the ticket that was given by the officer. So overall, body cameras are beneficial in a number of ways. They help hold officers accountable for crimes that they commit, and they also improve the mentality of officers and encourage them not to act in corrupt or illegal ways. They also help officers incarcerate people for crimes that are difficult to prove in court, and that is why body cameras should be. Every police officer should be equipped with a body camera that cannot be disabled or turned off.
All right, Justin, I thought the reference to the current events at the beginning was pretty good, although I do think it is followed up by a presupposition that the source of the problem is the law enforcement officers with their mob mentality and their predisposition to believe that they are in a position of power. I think that you want to be careful about making those assumptions without offering some kind of proof. The propositional claim is very clearly stated at the beginning, and here it's a claim of fact at the beginning of the speech. At the end of the speech, though, you do make it into a claim of policy and advocate that we take that action, and that's a little bit inconsistent. Just stick with the proposition that you had at the beginning of the speech. This might be an interesting topic, by the way, for our debates down the road, so it might be something when we're doing the debate somebody would think about these kinds of things, something a little bit different. There's not really a preview of what the supporting points are going to be at the beginning of the speech, but in the body of the speech you do cite your supporting points pretty clearly. They're labeled and easy to follow. You explain them adequately. The proof on them is a little problematic. We've got a lot of hypothetical examples that you're presenting, and then kind of a theoretical interpretation of the real examples that you have, which I think is also very hypothetical in nature. You only had a couple of places where you had specific pieces of testimony that applied to the argument, and I think you need a lot more of that kind of information for things to work. There is one question that pops up, like you had that one statistical piece of information about the number of complaints and that sort of thing, and the immediate question that occurred to me was, now is that because the police officers behaved better, or is that because people now realize that they didn't have any basis for making a complaint because they didn't have any evidence to suggest that there was anything wrong? So I'm not sure which is the source of the problem, and it may not matter all that much if we were just talking about whether or not this policy is going to work to fix that problem. One of the things that you want to talk about is why it's important to fix those kinds of problems, whether it's community relations or the amount of time that's spent investigating those kinds of issues. I think that those would be good arguments to be developed and to make that point. I thought you did a very nice job presenting the speech. You talked to the audience, you know what you're talking about. Like I said, like a couple of other people that we've talked about tonight, I think you've got a good argument. I think you've got a couple of pieces of evidence that are good for the argument, but I think you need a lot more to make it a convincing argument. And it's just one of those things where, is this sufficient to believe the claim that you're making? I'm not quite sure it is sufficient, but it does raise some possibilities. All right, thank you.